The creek ran like a vein through Willow Bend, that forgotten slice of Appalachia where the hills folded into each other like old lovers' hands, and Matthew Hayes had sworn he'd never let anyone dam it up. But there it was, at dawn's first blush, a gray serpent of concrete slithering into the water, turning the crystal flow into a choking slurry that smelled of wet cement and betrayal. "What the hell have you done?" Matthew whispered to the empty air, his voice cracking like the first frost, as Samuel's truck tires crunched up the gravel drive behind him. Too late. Always just a heartbeat too late. Samuel Kane slammed the door of his battered Ford, his boots hitting the mud with the force of a man who'd buried too many secrets under that soil. "Matt? Jesus. Talk to me. What's this?" He froze at the sight, his broad shoulders slumping under the weight of it all. The creek they'd skinny dipped in as boys, now poisoned by some neighbor's spite. In that moment, as the sun clawed over the ridge, Matthew turned, eyes wild with a grief that Samuel knew too well, the kind that bound them tighter than any vow, forged in the fire of small-town whispers and stolen kisses under willow branches. Matthew's hands trembled as he knelt by the bank, scooping up a handful of the muck that used to be home to minnows and memories. The concrete hadn't set yet, a fresh pour that mocked the autumn leaves drifting downstream like feudal flags of surrender. Willow Bend wasn't much, a cluster of clapboard houses clinging to the hollers of eastern Kentucky, where coal dust still lingered in the lungs of the old-timers and the young ones dreamed of escape. But the creek, that was sacred. It fed the wild blackberries that stained their lips in summer, whispered secrets during the long, humid nights when Matthew and Samuel would sneak away from family barbecues, hearts pounding with the thrill of what they couldn't say aloud. Samuel dropped to one knee beside him, his calloused fingers, rough from years fixing engines at the local garage, brushing Matthew's wrist. "This ain't right. Who'd do this?" His voice was low, gravelly, the kind that could soothe a colicky engine or a broken soul. Samuel had always been the steady one, the oak to Matthew's willow, bending but never breaking. They'd grown up blocks apart, trading comic books and baseball cards, until one humid July night at 16, when a game of truth or dare by the creek turned into their first clumsy kiss. It was fireworks and fear, the kind that lit up the dark but left scorch marks on the heart. Matthew pulled away, not harshly, but with the distance of a man staring down his own unraveling. "Karen. Has to be. That busybody from the HOA Homeowners Association. Like it's some country club instead of a dirt road dead end." He spat the words, tasting bile. Karen Whitaker, queen of the neighborhood watch, with her peroxide bob and pearls that screamed old money from Louisville transplants. She'd been gunning for him since he came out last spring, first with passive-aggressive flyers about property values, then escalating to complaints about his unkempt yard after he planted a community garden by the creek. But this, pouring concrete to block the flow, claiming it was to stabilize the bank for her precious new deck, it was war. Samuel's jaw tightened, a muscle ticking like a countdown. "We call the sheriff. Get evidence." He pulled out his phone, snapping photos as the light strengthened, casting long shadows over the violation. Matthew watched him, the way Samuel's brow furrowed in concentration, the faint scar on his knuckle from a bar fight he'd never talk about. God, he loved that man, the quiet strength, the way he'd drop everything for a midnight drive to the ridge just to stargaze and forget the world's judgments. But love in Willow Bend came with barbs. Samuel's family ran the garage, deep in the Bible Belt's grip, and while he'd come out to Matthew years ago, the town knew in whispers, never shouts. kept them safe, but it carved hollows in their nights. By noon, the sheriff, a portly guy named Harlan with a mustache like a broom bristle, pulled up in his cruiser, chewing on a toothpick as he surveyed the mess. "Well, boys, looks like someone's got a beef. Karen's been yappin' about erosion all summer. Says the creek's floodin' her property." He scratched his head, hat tipping back to reveal sweat-slicked hair. Matthew's blood boiled. The creek hadn't flooded since the big rain of '09, and even then, it was gentle as a sigh. "She's poisoned it, Harlan. Killed everything downstream." Matthew's voice rose, echoing off the hills. Samuel laid a hand on his shoulder, grounding him, but the touch lingered a beat too long, drawing Harlan's eye with a flicker of something unspoken. Pity? Disgust? The sheriff cleared his throat. "I'll file a report. Environmental folks'll wanna look. But HOA's got pull round here. Matt, watch your step." As Harlan drove off, dust swirling in his wake, Samuel pulled Matthew into a rough embrace, the kind that said, "I'm here without words." They stood like that until the concrete began to harden, a scar on the land that mirrored the one forming in Matthew's chest. That night, over lukewarm beers on Matthew's sagging porch, they pieced it together. Karen had rallied the HOA board at the last meeting, decrying the nuisance of the creek's wild path. Whispers of Matthew's lifestyle had slithered through the minutes, veiled but venomous. "It's not just the creek," Samuel said, staring into the foam. "It's us. She's comin' for everything we hold on to." Matthew nodded, the weight settling like fog. But in Samuel's eyes, he saw the spark, the fight. They'd face it together, as always. Little did they know, the pour was just the beginning, a concrete heart beating with malice that would test every bond they'd forged. The days blurred into a haze of phone calls and forms. Matthew, a freelance illustrator who'd traded city dreams for the quiet of Willow Bend, sketched furiously crayon maps of the creek's bends, watercolors of the life it sustained. Herons dipping for trout, kids skipping stones on lazy Sundays. He emailed them to the state EPA, his fingers flying over keys worn smooth from late-night confessions typed to Samuel. Samuel, meanwhile, sweet-talked Old Man Jenkins at the feed store for soil samples, bagging mud like it was gold dust. Their evenings stretched long, poring over statutes by lamplight, Matthew's head on Samuel's thigh as the fire crackled low. One such night, as rain pattered the tin roof, Samuel traced the line of Matthew's jaw. "Remember the summer we built that fort? Logs and creek mud. Kings of the holler." His voice was soft, laced with that Kentucky drawl that melted Matthew every time. Matthew smiled, faint but real. "Yeah. And you swore you'd protect it forever." Samuel's hand stilled. "I meant it. For the creek. For you." The kiss that followed was slow, tender, a reaffirmation amid the storm. No fire, just warmth, the kind that promised tomorrows. But tomorrows brought Karen to their door. She arrived at dawn, flanked by 2 board members in pressed khakis, her smile sharp as a switchblade. "Matthew, dear, we need to discuss the incident." Her eyes flicked to Samuel's truck, parked brazenly close. "Though I see you've got company." Again, the implication hung heavy, a noose of normalcy. Matthew stepped forward, blocking the threshold. "You mean the concrete you dumped in my creek?" "Yeah. Let's discuss that." Karen's laugh tinkled like breaking glass. "Oh, honey, It's our creek. HOA property line runs right through. Just a little reinforcement. For safety. The board members nodded like bobbleheads, avoiding Samuel's glare. He stepped up then, voice steady. Safety? You killed a habitat. Fished out the evidence yet. Karen's facade cracked. Just a hair, lips pursing as she clutched her clipboard. Mind your tone. Samuel Kane. Your father's garage depends on good neighbors. The threat landed like a slap, and Matthew felt Samuel tense beside him. She left with a flurry of papers. Cease and desist notices, citations for unauthorized gatherings by the water. As her Cadillac purred away, Matthew turned to Samuel, heart hammering. She knows. About us. Samuel pulled him close, rain mingling with unshed tears. Let her. We're not hidin' anymore. But in the quiet that followed, doubt crept in like roots under concrete. How far would she go to bury them? Word spread through Willow Bend like kudzu. By week's end, the general store buzzed with murmurs. Karen's deck was half-built, gleaming with forbidden lumber, while the creek downstream ran sluggish, fish bellies flashing white in the shallows. Old Mrs. Hargrove, who'd taught Matthew to braid willow baskets, slipped him a jar of creek water, murky, lifeless. Fight it, boy. That water's older than all of us. Her eyes twinkled with the mischief of generations, a quiet ally in the shadows. Samuel's family fractured next. His pa, grizzled and God-fearing, cornered him in the garage bay. Heard 'bout the ruckus. And that boy's name on your lips again. Samuel wiped grease from his hands, meeting the stare. Matthew's more than a boy, Pa. He's family. The old man deflated, muttering about the wages of sin. But there was no fire in it, just weariness. Samuel drove home that night with a knot in his gut, finding Matthew sketching by candlelight, the portrait of fierce Karen with concrete hands. They made love to the rhythm of regret that night. Not urgent, but deliberate, bodies mapping the familiar terrain of each other's scars. Afterward, tangled in sheets that smelled of pine and sweat, Matthew whispered, "What if we lose?" Samuel's arm tightened around him. Then we rebuild. Like always, but loss came swift. The EPA report landed like a gut punch. Preliminary findings cited insufficient evidence of malice, thanks to Karen's slick lawyer from Lexington. The HOA meeting loomed, a coliseum where they'd face the lioness in pearls. As they drove into town, Samuel's hand on Matthew's knee, the hills seemed to close in, whispering warnings. Little did they know, the deepest cut was yet to come, from a hand they trusted. The community center smelled of stale coffee and desperation, fluorescent lights buzzing like angry hornets over folding chairs arranged in a semicircle of judgment. Matthew and Samuel arrived early, staking claim to seats in the back. But eyes followed them anyway, curious glances from the mill workers, pitying nods from the church ladies. Karen held court at the front, projector humming as she clicked through slides, graphs of erosion risks, photos of her half-submerged lawn from a rain that never was. "We must protect our investments," she cooed, voice honey over venom. "For our families." Matthew's fingers dug into his palms, nails biting crescents. Samuel's thigh pressed against his under the table, a silent anchor. When the floor opened, they stood together, Matthew's voice steady despite the tremor in his chest. "This isn't protection, it's destruction. That concrete's killing the creek. Our creek, that's sustained this town for generations." He passed around printed sketches, testimonials from locals who'd signed in secret. Murmurs rippled. Old Jenkins cleared his throat. Boys right. My tomatoes downstream look like they saw a ghost. Karen's smile didn't waver. Sentimental, Matthew. But progress demands sacrifice. Her eyes locked on Samuel then, a predator's gleam. Though some sacrifices are self-inflicted, the room tensed, whispers sharpening to knives. Samuel rose, slow and sure. Ma'am, if you're implying, but she cut him off with a wave. Votes next. All in favor of ratifying the stabilization project. Hands rose like dominoes, 8-4, with abstentions from the fence-sitters. Defeat tasted like ash. As the meeting dissolved into awkward small talk, Karen approached, her perfume cloying. You fought well, boys. But Willow Bend values harmony. She leaned in, voice a hiss. Stay out of our waters. Samuel's hand fisted at his side. But Matthew pulled him away, out into the crisp night where stars pricked the sky like accusations. They drove in silence to the ridge, the highest point overlooking the holler, where the creek's silver thread wound through the dark. Parking under a canopy of oaks, they climbed out, blankets and a thermos of spiked cider in tow, their ritual for hard days. Matthew leaned against the hood, wind tugging at his jacket. We lost. Just like that. Samuel wrapped arms around him from behind, chin on his shoulder. Nah. We planted seeds. Folks'll remember. The kiss started soft, a bomb, but deepened with the urgency of the lost. Samuel's hands roamed Matthew's back, mapping ribs and resolve, while Matthew turned, pulling him closer until the world narrowed to breaths mingling and hearts sinking. They sank to the blanket, the ridge their kingdom, bodies entwining in a dance as old as the hills, tender explorations, whispers of I love you against skin. No rush, just reverence, the romance of two souls defying the pull of conformity. Dawn found them tangled, dew-kissed and determined. Back home, the fight reignited. Samuel called in favors, digging into Karen's permits. Turns out, the concrete supplier was her cousin's firm. Invoices fudged. Matthew rallied the holdouts, Mrs. Hargrove organized a petition drive at the diner, while the kids from his garden club drew protest posters with crayons and conviction. Save our creek, they chanted at an impromptu rally by the bank, voices piping over the gurgle of tainted water. But cracks appeared in their front. Samuel's phone buzzed late one night. His sister, Ellie, voice thick with tears. Pa's sick again. Sam. Heart stuff. Doc says stress. Samuel paced the kitchen. Matthew watching from the table. Coffee gone cold. It's the town. The whispers. He blames himself. For you. Samuel sank into a chair, head in hands. I can't fix that, Elle, but the guilt wormed in, a shadow over their mornings. Then the betrayal hit like a flash flood. Came via email. Anonymous at first, photos of Matthew and Samuel on the ridge. Blurred but unmistakable. Time-stamped from the HOA meeting night. Attached was a note. Keep pushing, and these go public. Protect your creek or your secrets. Matthew's stomach dropped. Who? Samuel's face paled. Gotta be bored. Or. Wait. He scrolled contacts, landing on Tommy Reese, the lanky kid from high school, now Karen's right hand in the HOA, who'd clapped Samuel on the back just last week, promising support. Confrontation came at the garage, oil pits gleaming under harsh lights. Tommy fidgeted by the workbench, avoiding eyes. Wasn't personal, Sam. Karen. She knows things. About my own stuff. He glanced away, shame coloring his cheeks, rumors of his own hidden nights with the bartender from Pineville. Samuel's voice was ice. You sold us out for what? A pat on the head. Tommy shrugged, defeated. Survival, man. In this town, Matthew arrived mid-argument, tires screeching. He didn't yell. Worse, he pitted. Tommy, we're all surviving. But drowning others? That's just sinking. Tommy slunk away, but the damage lingered, a rift in the fragile web of small-town trust. That night, Matthew dreamed of concrete walls closing in, Samuel's hand slipping from his. Retaliation brewed. With Tommy's confession recorded on Samuel's phone, they filed for an injunction, citing conflict of interest. The lawyer, a sharp-nosed woman from Lexington named Rita, who specialized in environmental suits, saw gold. This reeks of discrimination. Weave in the hate angle, and it's not just eco-war, it's civil rights. Her office overlooked the Ohio River, a far cry from Willow Bend's hollers, but her fire matched theirs. Weeks ground on hearings in a stuffy courthouse where the judge, a silver-haired holdover from coal baron days, banged his gavel like thunder. Karen took the stand, pearls glinting, spinning tales of community good. That creek's a hazard, Your Honor. And distractions, like certain associations, only exacerbate risks. The room gasped. Matthew's cheeks burned, Samuel's hand finding his under the table, squeezing. We got this. Their turn came. Matthew testified, voice steady as he described the creek's soul, the way it sang after rain, cradled fireflies in summer gloam. It's not property, it's pulse. And she tried to stop its heart because I love a man who loves me back. Tears welled, but he held them, the room holding its breath. Samuel followed, recounting the betrayal, the photos, a violation deeper than concrete. Willow Bend's better than this. We're family here, not foes. The judge adjourned, promising a ruling soon. Outside, reporters swarmed, local news sniffing a human interest hook. Gay couple fights HOA tyrant, headlines blared, thrusting their quiet love into spotlights they dodged for years. Samuel hated it, the calls from distant cousins with advice. But Matthew? He stood taller, sketching their story for the paper, a creek bursting free, lovers hand in hand. Yet doubt festered. Samuel pulled away one evening, staring at the creek's sluggish flow. What if winning costs us everything? Pa's worse. Elle says. And the garage. Matthew cupped his face, thumbs brushing stubble. Then we start over. You, me, a new holler. Samuel's laugh was bittersweet. Romantic fool, but his kiss said maybe. The ruling dropped like manna. Injunction granted, project halted pending full investigation. Cheers erupted in Rita's office. Champagne popped amid stacks of files. Karen's empire teetered. Fines loomed. Her deck dismantled by county crews. But victory soured fast. Samuel's pa passed that night, quiet in his sleep, the stress a silent thief. At the funeral, under a sky bruised purple, Samuel stood graveside, Matthew a step back, respecting the family's chill. Whispers followed, his fault, that boy's. In the cemetery's hush, Samuel found Matthew by the iron gate. "Don't leave," Matthew murmured, arms open. Samuel collapsed into them, sobs muffled against flannel. Never. Their grief wove tighter, a bond forged in loss. But the creek still choked, and Karen's shadow loomed larger, plotting her counterstrike. Grief hung over Willow Bend like Spanish moss, heavy and inescapable. Samuel moved through days in a fog, wrenching bolts at the garage with mechanical precision. But his eyes, those warm hazel depths Matthew drowned in, were distant, shadowed. The funeral had been a study in restraint, black suits and hymns, Samuel's ma clutching a handkerchief, Ellie glaring daggers at Matthew from the pews. He'd sat alone in the back, sketching the stained glass saints to keep his hands from shaking. The ache in his chest an echo of Samuel's unspoken plea. Stay close, but not too close. Nights where there's alone. Matthew cooked, simple things, cornbread and greens from the garden that had miraculously greened again with the rains, serving it on the porch where fireflies danced tentative waltzes over the yard. Samuel ate in silence at first, then with gratitude that bloomed into stories. His paws wore tales, the garage's lean years when a single customer's loyalty kept the lights on. He wasn't perfect, Samuel admitted one twilight, voice raw. Called me names once, after he found out. But he came around. In his way, Matthew listened, hand on knee. The romance in their quiet, the way love filled silences without demand. The creek stirred too, a faint pulse returning as volunteers. Jenkins, Mrs. Hargrove, even waverers from the meeting, waded in with buckets and gloves, chiseling at the concrete edges. Matthew joined them, knee-deep in chill water, the labor a catharsis. "Look!" a kid yelled, holding up a wriggling minnow, silver flash of hope. Samuel watched from the bank, a ghost of a smile cracking his mask. That evening, he dove in too, their hands brushing underwater in accidental-on-purpose touches, the current carrying away shards of sorrow. But Karen wasn't done. Her counter came sly. A petition circulated door to door. Reclaim our rights. Vote out the activists. It painted Matthew as an outsider agitator, importing city vices, with veiled swipes at his illustrations. Deviant art polluting our youth. Samuel found one slipped under his door, the paper crisp with malice. "She's rallying the old guard," he growled, crumpling it. Matthew smoothed it out, reading between lines. "It's personal now. Us," Rita called the next day, voice crackling over the line. "Discovery phase, they're digging into your backgrounds. Be clean." But cleanliness in Willow Bend was relative. Old photos surfaced. Matthew's college zine. Queer poetry splashed across pages. Samuel's bar fight, defending a drag queen from rowdies in Lexington. Karen's lawyer subpoenaed them all, turning private pains public. The town split. Supporters left casseroles on Matthew's stoop. Opponents keyed freak into Samuel's truck fender. Isolation crept in. Ellie's calls ceased. The garage slowed, customers citing loyalties. Samuel worked late, coming home to Matthew's sketches, visions of a healed creek, lovers picnicking on verdant banks. "Dreams," Matthew said softly, pulling him to bed. Their intimacy deepened, a sanctuary. Slow dances in the kitchen to Merle Haggard on vinyl, fingers interlaced as they traced constellations from the hammock. "You're my North Star," Samuel murmured once, lips brushing temple, and Matthew believed it, even as storms gathered. The high school fundraiser, a harvest fair with hayrides and pie contests, became ground zero. Karen manned the booth for Creek Safety Awareness, handing out pamphlets laced with half-truths. Matthew and Samuel volunteered at the art table, kids clamoring for creek murals. But tension simmered. When a teen asked about the gay stuff in the papers, Samuel knelt eye level. "Love's love, kid. Like pie, best when shared." The boy blushed, nodding, but Karen's voice cut through. "Not all pies are wholesome, Samuel." Clash ignited over a spilled cider. Accidental, or so she claimed, splashing Matthew's sketchbook. Ink ran like tears, pages ruined. "Oops," Karen simpered, but her eyes gleamed triumph. Samuel lunged, stopped by Jenkins' firm hand. "Not here, son." Matthew wiped the mess, chin high. "It's just paper." Stories live on, but inside, fury boiled, a drama of restraint, the emotional undercurrent pulling him under. That night, alone by the creek, Matthew hurled stones into the murk, each splash a curse. Samuel found him there, soaked and seething. "Let it out," he urged, joining the ritual until arms ached and laughter bubbled up, absurd and freeing. They collapsed on the bank, heads together, watching clouds scud. "She's breaking us," Matthew confessed. Samuel turned, cupping his face. "No. She's showing how unbreakable we are." The kiss was fierce, a vow lips claiming, hands anchoring, bodies aligning in wordless poetry. Passion without possession, romance raw and real. Renewal flickered. The petition faltered, too many signatures forged. Exposed by a whistleblower, Tommy. Redemption's whisper. Rita pounced, amending the suit fraud, harassment, eco-terror veiled as civility. Depositions loomed, Karen squirming under oath as Rita dissected her motives. And the photos, Mrs. Whitaker, stalking to silence dissent. Karen blanched, pearls clacking. Protecting values, public tide turned. The Courier-Journal ran a feature, Holler Hearts, a creek, couple, and the fight for home. Readers flooded in, activists from Louisville, donors for creek cleanup. Willow Bend's diner filled with out-of-towners, swapping stories over biscuits. Mrs. Hargrove baked Matthew a blackberry pie. For the kings of the creek, even Ellie thawed, dropping by with pie from Ma. "He'd have hated the mess," she said of Pa. "I soft. But proud of you, maybe." Samuel's grief eased into grace. He scattered his pa's ashes by the garage, Matthew at his side, the wind carrying them toward the hills. "To new roads," Samuel toasted with a flask of bourbon. Their nights reclaimed joy, road trips to Berea for folk art festivals, hands linked over gear shifts, singing off-key to Lucinda Williams. Love's drama unfolded in small acts, Samuel carving Matthew's initials into a oak slab for the mantel, Matthew illustrating a children's book on Kentucky waterways, dedicating it to us. My endless current, yet climax brewed. Karen's final gambit, a midnight crew, under cover of new moon, to finish the pour deeper, irreversible. A tip from Tommy alerted them. Samuel gunned the truck, Matthew beside, hearts thunder. They arrived to floodlights and shovels, Karen directing like a general. "Stop," Samuel bellowed, phone raised, live streaming to the activists group. Chaos erupted, shouts, scuffles, A deputy's arrival as concrete trucks idled. Matthew faced her amid the din, voice cutting clear. This ends tonight. Not for the creek, for us. All of us. Karen sneered, but faltered, the weight of witnesses crushing her crown. As cuffs clicked, not hers, but the crew's foreman for unlicensed work, the creek side, a bubble breaking free. Dawn painted the holler gold. The pour halted half done. Samuel pulled Matthew close, foreheads touching. We did it. But victory's afterglow dimmed with a call. Rita. Urgent. She's countersuing for defamation. And something about Samuel's pa's estate. Debts tied to the garage. Betrayal's second wave. Karen had bought the mortgage, foreclosing to bankrupt them. The fight, seemed, was far from over. Foreclosure notices tacked to the garage door fluttered like vultures' wings in the November gusts. Samuel stared at the paper, ink blurring under rain spots, his world contracting to eviction dates and auction blocks. She played dirty, he muttered, crumpling it. Matthew, arriving with thermoses of coffee, wrapped arms around him from behind. We fight dirtier. But the words rang hollow. The creek's partial victory felt Pyrrhic now, concrete remnants mocking their stand. Rita convened an emergency war room in her Riverview office, files splayed like battle maps. This is retaliation, classic slap suit, strategic lawsuit against public participation. We counter with anti-slap motion, plus emotional distress. Her eyes sparkled, a litigator's thrill. But costs mounted. Experts for the creek's valuation. Therapists' notes on the harassment's toll. Donors trickled in, queer orgs from Cincinnati, enviro groups from D.C., but Samuel's pride chafed. Can't beg, he said over diner hash browns. Matthew squeezed his hand under the formica. It's not begging. It's belonging. Willow Bend mirrored their strain. The garage limped, loyalists filling bays but gaps widening. Samuel tinkered late, radio crooning Johnny Cash laments. Matthew sketching nearby, portraits of customers, gifts to say thank you. One night, Ellie appeared, toolbox in hand. Ma sent me. Said the Kane men fix what's broke. She didn't mention the will's addendum. Pa leaving Samuel the garage, contingent on mending ways. But her presence mended something. They worked side by side, sibling silence thawing to stories of childhood pranks. The creek their shared backdrop. Karen escalated, her Lexington lawyer filing motions laced with vitriol. Claims of moral turpitude, tainting the suit. Affidavits from concerned citizens, decrying the homosexual agenda eroding family values. Headlines twisted, Creek clash turns custody battle? Implying Samuel's lifestyle threatened Ellie's kids, though custody was a lie. Panic clawed Matthew. He paced their kitchen, phone glued to updates. She's weaponizing hate. Samuel pulled him down, legs entwining on the rug. Then we armor with truth. Truth's parade came at the next hearing. Courthouse packed with allies, rainbow pins glinting among flannel. Matthew took the stand again. Voice a river's flow. Tales of the creek's nurture, paralleling their love's quiet strength. It bends, but doesn't break. Like us. Samuel followed, raw vulnerability cracking the room. Pa's deathbed words, whispered, love who you love, son. Just come home. A posthumous grace. Tears traced his cheeks. Matthew's heart swelled, the emotional crescendo a symphony of shared scars. Karen's testimony faltered under cross. Rita pounced. You purchased the mortgage post-meeting. Coincidence? Karen sputtered. Business savvy. But emails surfaced, her gloating to the board. Time to drain the swamp. The judge's brow furrowed, adjourning with a warning. Outside, supporters cheered. Hugs exchanged like lifelines. Tommy lingered at the edge, approaching sheepish. I testified against her. For what it's worth, Samuel clapped his shoulder. Worth a lot, brother. Winter deepened the drama, snow blanketing the holler in hush. They celebrated small wins, a holiday potluck at Mrs. Hargrove's, carols laced with Creek anthems. Samuel strung lights along the garage eaves, Matthew illuminating them with stories of Hanukkah miracles, his mom's Jewish roots a secret spice in their blend. Their romance glowed domestic, shared scarves on walks, cocoa by the wood stove, bodies curling close against the cold, kisses like embers, hands exploring with the intimacy of survivors. But betrayal's blade twisted deeper. Ellie called, voice shattering, Sam, it's Ma. Stroke. Hospital in Pikeville. They raced through flurries, Matthew driving as Samuel white-knuckled the dash. The ICU beeped sterile symphonies, Ma frail under tubes, Ellie pacing. She asked for you, Ellie said, eyes red. Before everything, Samuel sat vigil, Matthew in the waiting room, sketching Ma's hands veined maps of endurance. Dawn brought fragile recovery. Ma squeezed Samuel's fingers, murmuring, fix the home. Boy, he nodded, tears falling. Back in Willow Bend, resolve hardened. Rita unearthed the kill shot. Karen's firm had skirted EPA regs for years, dumps in county streams, covered up. Leverage, she grinned. They traded, drop the countersuit, or face federal probes. Karen's empire quaked. Her husband, a mild accountant, urged retreat. Spring teased with dogwoods blooming defiant. The creek ran clearer, minnows schooling in shallows. Court date arrived, theater electric. Karen entered diminished, pearls dull. Her settlement offer, full cleanup, garage mortgage forgiven, damages for distress. But the kicker, public apology at the next HOA meeting. She choked it out, voice monotone, I regret the harm to the community, including Mr. Hayes and Mr. Kane. The room erupted, applause, sobs, catharsis long denied. Aftermath washed gentle. Funds poured for restoration. Kayaks on the creek, garden expansions. Samuel refurbished the garage, adding a pride flag subtle in the window. Matthew's book launched, Creek Hearts, Tales of Love and Land, topping local charts. Their evenings, picnics by the water, fingers laced, watching herons fish. We won, Samuel said one sunset, head on Matthew's lap. More than the fight, yet humanity's nuance lingered. Karen faded to Florida, whispers of divorce. Tommy ran for HOA president. Platform, open waters for all. Ellie visited with the kids, teaching them to skip stones, boundaries blurring, family reknit. One balmy eve, as fireflies ignited, Samuel knelt by the creek, ring glinting, a simple band, etched with willow leaves. Marry me, Matt. Here, where it all bends but holds. Matthew's yes was a sob, their kiss sealing it, romance's pinnacle, emotional and eternal. The creek sang approval, a chorus of what endures. But wait, no. The story's arc demanded one final shadow. As wedding plans bloomed, a letter arrived, anonymous, postmarked Lexington. Inside, photos, not old ones, but new. Matthew laughing with a donor at the book signing, arm casual on a shoulder. Still playing? The threat echoed, a ghost of grudges. Samuel burned it, but doubt flickered. Old habits, he said. Matthew pulled him close. New truths, the letter's ashes scattered on the wind, but its smoke lingered, a haze over their idol. Matthew stared at the creek that afternoon, pole in hand, fishing for peace, hooking only minnows. Samuel joined him, baiting hooks with quiet efficiency. It's her, ain't it? Or one of her vipers? Matthew nodded, reeling slow. Doesn't matter. We're past hiding. But the words tasted like half-truths. In Willow Bend, pasts clung like burrs. Wedding whispers wove through town. Potluck planning at the diner. Mrs. Hargrove volunteering her orchard for vows. Samuel's ma, recovered enough for day trips, pinned boutonnieres with trembling hands. Like your pa's, she said. Eyes misty. Ellie orchestrated the kids' chorus. Pint-sized voices trilling Shenandoah. Matthew sketched invitations. Intertwined willows over water. Their initials nodded eternal. Yet nights, the phantom photos haunted dreams, exposures of vulnerability. Love laid bare. Rita advised vigilance. Document everything. Cease and desist if it escalates. But law's cold steel chafed against their warmth. Instead, they leaned into life, road trip to Mammoth Cave, lanterns carving shadows as they held hands in the underworld, emerging renewed. Like us, Samuel joked. Dark but unbreakable. Laughter echoed. Romance's spark igniting motel sheets in tender reunions. Bodies sinking like tides, whispers weaving futures. Back home, the Creek Festival marked summer's peak. Booths hawking blackberry jam. Kayaks gliding under strung lights. Matthew emceed, voice booming tales of the concrete comeback. Samuel manned the grill, flipping burgers with flair, their glances across the crowd electric. Tommy, now president, toasted them, to currents that carry us forward. Cheers rose, but midway, a shadow slunk, Karen's cousin, the supplier, nursing a beer, eyes narrow. Confrontation brewed at dusk, as bonfire crackled. The man cornered Samuel by the cooler. She sends regrets. And a warning, town's memories long. Samuel's laugh was steel. Ours too. Tell her the creek runs free. Matthew, overhearing, stepped up, arm linking Samuel's. And so do we. The man slunk off, but tension coiled, a dramatic undercurrent to the fiddle's joy. That night, alone under stars, they danced barefoot on the bank, creek lapping rhythm. Samuel's hands spanned Matthew's waist, leading a slow sway. Scared? He asked, breath warm on neck. Matthew turned, noses brushing. Of losing you? Always. But not of this. Their kiss deepened. A pledge, lips parting secrets, hearts hammering home. Passion flowed humanistic. Not conquest, but communion, souls merging in the firelight's glow. September brought the wedding, orchard awash in gold. Vows exchanged under an arch of woven willows. Samuel's voice gravel-soft. I promise to bend with you, through floods and freezes. Matthew's reply, tear-choked. And I'll root deep, So we never drift. Rings slid on. Simple gold warmed by sun. The kiss sealed it. Cheers erupting. Kids tossing petals like confetti storms. Ma dabbed eyes. Ellie hugged fierce. Even Jenkins grumbled approval over cake. Honeymoon was local magic. Cabin in the Daniel Boone National Forest. Hikes to waterfalls where they swam nude in private pools. Bodies glistening. Laughter echoing off cliffs. Evenings by fire. Matthew reading poetry. Whitman's Leaves of Grass mirroring their tangle. Love's romance peaked in vulnerability. Samuel tracing Matthew's tattoos. A creek line snaking his forearm. Sharing fears of fatherhood. Legacy. Want kids? Matthew mused. Samuel nodded. With you?
Yeah.
Teaching him to fish. Fight fair. Return thrust them into triumph's tale. The final EPA ruling dropped. Karen's firm fine millions. Cleanup mandated. Her name synonymous with Karen Concrete. A national meme. Late-night fodder. Donors swelled the Creek Fund. Matthew's book hit reprints. Proceeds seeding scholarships for queer youth in hollers. Samuel expanded the garage hybrid repairs. Green mechanics, a nod to progress. But the letter's echo resurfaced. Another envelope. This time with a grainy shot. Their wedding kiss. Zoomed intrusive. Happily never after? Matthew's hands shook showing Samuel. We go public. Full. Samuel agreed. Heart heavy. They penned an op-ed for the Courier. From concrete to commitment, our story. Bearing it all betrayals. Bonds. The Creek's metaphor for resilience. Published front page. It went viral. Shares from activists. Letters from kin estranged no more. Fallout fractured then healed. The sender confessed, Karen herself, from her Gulf Coast exile. Email laced with regret. I was afraid. Of change. Forgive? Matthew drafted reply with Samuel. Forgiveness is a current, yours to join. No response. But peace settled. Humanistic grace over grudge. Winter's cusp. They adopted a pup. Muddy mutt from the shelter. Named Willow. Mornings. Walks by the creek. Now thriving. Otters playing. Banks blooming. Samuel proposed expansions. Community center annex. Art classes in the garage. Matthew illustrated murals. Histories of Willow Bend. Queer threads woven in. One eve, as snow dusted ridges, they sat porch-wrapped, Willow at feet. Think we'd have found this without the fight? Matthew asked. Samuel's arm tightened. Nah. Adversity's the forge. Their kiss was winter warm, enduring, a tale's emotional core, romantic in its realness. Yet drama's denouement whispered by tragic. News came gentle. Karen, cancer, months left. No malice, just mortality. They debated visiting. Samuel decided yes. Drive south. Motel night en route, holding close against unknowns. At her sterile room, Karen frail, pearls absent. Saw your piece, she rasped. Beautiful. I'm sorry. Samuel took her hand. Water under the bridge. Matthew added. Let it flow. She passed weeks later. Will donating residuals to creek trusts, anonymously. Willow Bend mourned complicated. Villain to victim, human all. At her service, Matthew and Samuel stood back, reflecting. Redemption's messy, Samuel said. Matthew nodded. Like love, spring cycled eternal, creek swelling with melt. They planted a willow sapling by the bank. memorial to scars, symbol of sway. Life bloomed. Ellie's baby due. Garage thriving. Book tour calls. Their romance, steady current, kisses at dawn. Hands in dirt, hearts in holler harmony. Years folded like the hills. Time's gentle erosion smoothing edges. Willow Bend evolved. Solar panels on the community center. Pride flags fluttering beside rebel yells at the fair. Matthew's studio overflowed. Commissions for murals in Lexington cafes. His style a blend of Appalachian grit and queer lyricism. Samuel's garage hummed hybrids and Harleys. A mentorship program for at-risk youth. Teaching wrenches and worth. Willow the dog chased fireflies. Gray-muzzled but spry. Mirror to their stride. Anniversaries marked milestones. First, a creek picnic with blackberries and bourbon. Fifth, a vow renewal under the grown willow. Ellie officiating. Kids scattering petals. Ma, silver-haired sentinel, baked the cake. Recipe from Pa's side, layered with forgiveness. Love's drama mellowed to depth. Arguments over dinner, Matthew's late nights. Samuel's oil stains. Resolved in bed with makeup murmurs. Bodies familiar as home. The creek thrived. Ecotours kayaking its bends. Plaques noting the concrete reversal. Thanks to two hearts. School kids studied it in civics. Essays on resilience echoing Matthew's sketches. One such paper. From Tommy's son, Love Saved Our Water, read at the dedication. Samuel teared up. Matthew squeezed his knee. Pride swelling. By tragic threads wove subtle. Ellie's divorce. Custody won with their testimony. Families full circle. A storm in 28 flooded the holler. Garage half submerged. But neighbors shoveled sandbags. Emerging stronger. Like us, Samuel quipped. Mud-caked kiss sealing it. Fatherhood came late. Deliberate. A boy from foster care. Wide-eyed Jamie with curls like Matthew's. Adoption hearings tested. Old ghost stirring. But Judge Harlan, retired but consulting, banged gavel approving. World needs more like you too. Jamie's first cast into the creek hooked a trout. Cheers echoed. Samuel's arm around Matthew's waist. Jamie between, trio complete. Evenings. Story spun. Jamie wrapped by tales of the concrete which, moral bent gentle, everyone's fighting fears. Matthew illustrated his adventures. Samuel voiced the characters. Gravel drawl charming. Romance endured in margins. Stolen glances over bedtime books. Weekend getaways to the ridge, where they'd first dreamed big. National whispers grew. Documentary pitch. Creek of Courage, filmmakers from LA. Captivated by their arc. They agreed. Conditional, authenticity over gloss. Shoots captured raw. Kayaking laughs. Garage grease. Porch philosophies. Premiere in Louisville drew crowds. Standing ovation. Tears flowing. Post-screening. Q&A. How'd you survive the hate? Matthew. Love's the real landmark. Legacy rippled. Karen's donation. Revealed posthumous. Funded scholarships, queer enviro majors. Hollers to Harvard. A plaque by the creek. In memory of lessons learned. No name, but understanding. Old age crept kind. 60s silvering temples. Aches in joints from creek wades. Retirement? Partial Matthew teaching art at the center. Samuel consulting mechanics. Grandkids. Ellie's brood grown. Splash the banks. Jamie's twins learning skips. One autumn. Under the willow, now ancient sentinel, they sat. Hands laced. Regrets. Samuel asked, voice weathered wise. Matthew leaned head on shoulder. None. Every bend led here. Winter's last eve. Snow soft. They walked the creek trail. Willow long gone but spirit in every paw print. Samuel faltered. Breath short. Heart like pause. Matthew steadied. Calling Ellie. Ambulance wailing. Hospital hush. Lived full, doctor said. Samuel squeezed Matthew's hand. Promise, wait for me. Other side. We'll fish eternal. Matthew nodded. Kiss lingering. Always. Samuel slipped at dawn. Peaceful. Creek murmuring elegy outside window. Willow Bend mourned grand. Procession to the ridge. Ashes scattered with pause. Bourbon toasts under stars. Matthew spoke at graveside. He was oak, steady, sheltering. Loved fierce. Lived true. Tears collective. But smiles too, stories swapped of his pranks. Passions. Widowhood hollowed, but hollows fill. Matthew tended the garden. Sketched memoirs, oak and willow, a life current. Jamie and family anchored. Town adopted him. Potlucks his lifeline. Creek festivals honored the canes. Rainbow ribbons on willows. Years later, Matthew joined Samuel. Quiet in sleep. Sketchpad beside. Funeral by the water. Readings from his book. Songs from grandkids. Ashes mingled in the flow. Eternal eddy. Willow Bend endures. Creek carving canyons of memory. Plaques fade, but stories sing. Of two men. Concrete and commitment. Bending but unbroken. Love's legacy. A current carrying forward. Humanistic hymn to what flows free. In the holler's heart, where hills embrace, the water whispers their names. Matthew, Samuel eternal, entwined.